Welcome to the show. We start off with fresh news coming from Brazil this Thursday, where a majority of the Brazilian Supreme Court panel have voted to convict former President Jair Bolsonaro of attempting a coup to stay in power after his 2022 election loss. 3 of the 5 justices ruled guilty on all 5 charges, while 1 has dissented. Bolsonaro is currently under house arrest and he faces a potential decades-long sentence once the final votes and sentencing are completed. Well, let's go straight to our correspondent in Brazil, Tim Vickery. Tim, what exactly has happened today?
Well, yesterday there was a reprieve for Bolsonaro when the 3rd judge, Luis Fux, spent 13 hours outlining why he thought Bolsonaro was innocent on all charges. Only a temporary reprieve because very quickly on Thursday, the 4th judge, Carmen Lucia, found him guilty on all charges. The 5th judge, the 5th and final judge, Cristian Zanin, is giving his verdict at the moment, but there is already a majority. Bolsonaro has already been convicted, and tomorrow the judges will assemble once more to decide the sentence, which goes from a minimum of 16 years to a maximum of 43.
That's a massive sentence, and no doubt Bolsonaro and his team are fighting back. What does he have available to him? What kind of instruments does he have at his disposal to fight against any conviction?
The usual jurisprudence in Brazil is that you need 2 of the 5 judges of the Supreme Court to dissent to have good grounds for an appeal. At the moment, he only has 1. We're still waiting for Cristian Zanin to finish his verdict, but it looks unlikely that he's going to break ranks with the other 4. So really the focus now will move to Congress, where there are projects for an amnesty for political prisoners in Brazil, for all of those involved in the riots on January the 8th, including Bolsonaro and his fellow defendants who've now been found guilty. One of their problems is that yesterday, Luis Fux, seen as the hope of the right, he perhaps overshot a little bit. He went further than most had been expecting, finding Bolsonaro innocent, despite admitting that there were lots of things happening that would benefit Bolsonaro. How could he explain this? Well, his narrative was that the guilty parties were Bolsonaro's personal aide, who follows his instructions, and Bolsonaro's running mate. Now, it was expected that Luis Fux would argue for a reduction of sentence rather than innocence. And this verdict that he's put down, that it was all the fault of the butler, if you like, of Bolsonaro's personal aide and his running mate, is a little bit left field and may a little bit have weakened the case of those in Congress who'll be pushing for an amnesty. But nonetheless, they will push. Now the verdict is in, the game switches to Congress, where Bolsonaro supporters will push for an amnesty.
Now, Tim, this is quite interesting. This was a January 8th coup attempt. There was, of course, the January 6th coup attempt in the United States. Lots of parallels that we can draw and similarities. And yet, Brazil have been able to do something here that the United States never could.
Yes, it's a really interesting parallel, isn't it? I think there are 2 main reasons for the difference. One is the example of the United States, not only of the States, of a few authoritarian governments, including Venezuela on the left and many right-wing ones, where the separation of powers appears to be seen as an enemy and the judiciary are seen as a force to be dominated. So I think the example of the Trump government has perhaps hardened the resolve of Brazil's Supreme Court, especially as Trump has been bullying Brazil on this issue. But there's another factor, and that's the weakness of Brazil's party system. Now, that's often a problem. It means with so many political parties that governance in Brazil is often down to bargaining. But it does mean that it's easier to have a plurality of opinions. Alexandre de Moraes, the president of the Supreme Court, the hate figure of the Brazilian right, if you look at his political career, he's really a creature of the centre right. In the United States, perhaps a little bit crude, but you may call him a kind of moderate Republican. In the States, with the dual party thing, he would have been marginalised by the control of the Trump faction in the Republican Party. Brazil, more political parties, more plurality. It's been harder for the extreme right to take control of all 3 branches of government. I think that's probably a significant difference.
That is a fascinating analysis there, Tim. Thank you so much, as always, coming to us from Rio de Janeiro, just on the back of that conviction for Jair Bolsonaro.